Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Village Bites. My name is Nokwazi Mzobe, and I will be the host and moderator for this evening. Welcome, and thank you for taking time off your Tuesday evening to spend time with us. I would like to just have some housekeeping rules. So to start off with, we have for Q&A, please write in the Q&A button at the bottom. And if you have any specific questions as well, please write over there. We also would like you to use the hashtag Village Bites on all social media platforms if you have any questions or comments to add. So to start off, I would like to say thank you and welcome, but also thank you to our guests. So Samm Marshall, John Foster-Pedley, and Allon Raiz. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. Good to be here.
Thank you. It's lovely to have you here. So as I said, everybody, my name is Nokwazi Mzobe, and I'll be moderating and hosting this evening. So to start off, this evening is about us sharing about our new upcoming program, which is a partnership between Henley Business School and Raiz Corp. The upcoming program is an HCMP, which is a higher certificate management program, specifically focusing on entrepreneurship. Tonight, we'll be speaking to specifically John, Allon, and Samm, where they'll be able to give us their perspectives and insights on why this program, why such a program can be beneficial to you if you are an entrepreneur or are an aspiring entrepreneur. So I know a few of you probably have this question. Why has Henley and Raiz Corp partnered to bring this particular program to the market? So I'm going to ask the Dean of Henley Business School Africa, John Foster-Pedley, to introduce himself and then also address this question.
Hi, thanks, Nokwazi, and wonderful to meet you all. And thank you very much for coming and listening. Let's try and give you some value. So look, it's a tricky thing. I mean, can you learn entrepreneurship in a classroom? Well, yes and no. And it's the yes and no bit we'll be talking about today to see how we can navigate our way through there and produce something of real value. I've been an entrepreneur. In fact, I've done many things in my life, including running an incubator in New Zealand, an innovation center, having some of my own businesses and working in all sorts of areas in my life. And I do believe that it's very hard to learn some of these skills of entrepreneurship in a classroom. And anyway, what is entrepreneurship? We speak of it as if it's this word, this thing, but it's a complex understanding of something, of a quality. Look, it's got components of knowledge. It's got components of experience. There's things you learn through action. It always helps sometimes when you've learned something to have somebody teach you the frameworks to think about it better. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you've gone to something and said, oh, now I understand what I always knew, but I can speak about it. And it gives you a language to explain it. And if you get that level, you can go to the next level easily. It's like you build your knowledge and it helps you progress quickly. So I think that this is really about creating an environment where people who want to build businesses, and not just business, but any activity in life really, that's going to be about doing stuff that they value, they want to bring something of use into the world. We're going to help them do that. I love working with Allon because Allon is just this amazing repository of insight and knowledge and capability around entrepreneurship. I've known a lot of people talk about entrepreneurship, but Allon really does it. And he's got the most successful incubator, oh, sorry, it's the wrong word, Allon, you'll correct me in a moment, accelerator for people. And Samm, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you got to say, but we're bringing a program I think is going to be unique to help people grow quickly and make you successful quickly in real time. That's what you want to do. And actually have a lot of fun and intellectual growth while you're doing it. Oh, and the other thing is this is an accredited program, which means that when you get the qualification at this level 5, you can then do a level 6 qualification. Then you can do a level 7. If you've got 5, 6, and 7, that's the same as a degree. And then you can go on and do an honors part-time like this. And then you can do an MBA. So if you thought you'd missed out on education, not only can you learn about education, but you actually get onto this stairway of academic achievement too. Why not? You know, so I think we thought it'd be great fun to do, and there's real need in the market. Our job is to do it well. So thank you, Nokwazi.
Thank you, John. And Allon, over to you.
Thanks, Nokwazi, and thanks, John, for those kind words. Yeah, so my name is Allon Raiz. I'm founder, or I call myself Chief Excitement Officer of Raiz Corp. And we've been supporting entrepreneurs for 20 years. We've had 13,000 businesses that we've effectively supported, both from launch to big scale businesses. And over that time, we've learned a lot ourselves. So why the partnership with Henley? Well, for me, first of all, as John alluded, we've been trying to work together for many, many years, and there's a kinship in terms of our approach. Our approach is off-center. It is not because it happened in the past, it has to happen in the future. We both have that sort of philosophical approach. And we are incredibly practical, as is Henley. And to me, it was a resonance around the practicality of how we would put this thing together that most excited me. Because when entrepreneurs read stuff in books, often those models are based on European or American examples, number one. Number two, they're based on big corporate, what works in a big corporate, and what works in a big corporate, which is resourced and organized in a wonderful way over many years, most often doesn't work in a small business. And so in this joint venture, this collaboration between Henley and Raiz Corp, it was very important for us to build something that is practical, is South African, and is right for a small business, and not a model or a framework that only really, it's very sexy, but only applies really in a big corporate context.
Thank you, Allon. So John, I'd like to move back to you. And I know that you have a passion for innovation and creativity in entrepreneurship. So would you like to share more a bit with us?
Yeah, it's fascinating when we have this passion for this thing called creativity. But I really believe we've all got that in us. I mean, I think the education system is brilliant in some ways, but it does tend to skew you away a little. I mean, you have all those people saying, "No, don't be a singer, don't be an artist, don't be this, don't be that. There's no, don't be a sportsman, there's no career in it." And people worry about careers, you know, as if you're all going to be engineers and professors and doctors. I mean, those are great careers. But in this moving, changing world we're living in, there are so many different ways to make an impact on life and to be creative. So I mean, they say, teach what you most want to learn. And so I love teaching creativity and innovation because it's most what I want to learn. And I don't mean by that it's something separate out there. You've got to be also radical. You can be a very, very quiet introvert and seem enormously conventional on the surface, and yet have this amazing mind that allows you to see new perspectives and new opportunities and make sense of the world in richer ways, to free yourself some of your conditioning. Which actually we're quite scared of doing because we think it's going to drop us in, you know, in chaos and poverty. It doesn't. You know, if you're inventing and seeing what people need, you'll nearly always do well because people need something. But at the same time, I think as a business practitioner, you also need tools that are going to help you make sense of things. You need to understand about finance. You need to understand what marketing is. And you also need to know, the one good thing about going to class is that lots of people have studied how to do something and they've condensed it into quite often the best way. Now there's a trap there because the best way sometimes gets out of date. So that's why you need to keep your originality even in what you're learning. So we'll give you tools to make sense of things and fast track your learning. You also at the same time need to keep your mind independent and be questioning everything at the same time. It's not like you question everything and throw it all out. You've got to do it, see the value of it, but also question so you can do it even better. And I think that's why innovation and creativity, I think, fascinates me, because in my life, it's given me so much interest and richness. And I think that's the same for everybody. And I think it's an opportunity for all of us to enrich our lives by doing more ambitious and braver things, the things that you believe you can't possibly do. And funny enough, quite often we can.
Thank you, John. And John, just a question. How do you think we as adults can, get ourselves to be more creative and be more innovative? Especially since you always hear that, the schooling system has killed creativity. And you'll hear people say, oh, I'm not a creative. So if I'm not a creative, I can't do this. So how would you encourage that?
I love it when people say I'm not creative. And I say, well, who taught you that? Why would you believe that about yourself? Of course you are. I mean, when you look after your kids, when you're doing things that are outside of them, we're all creative. We live creatively and imaginatively. It's just we stigmatize that in the formal world of corporates, but we don't need that formal world of corporate. And I love your saying, how would you advise adults? Like as if all adults are the same. Do we define adults by the people who've lost all their creativity? I don't think so. I think adulthood is about, stilted adulthood. Narrowed adulthood is when you've allowed the conditioning to overpower you. You need the conditioning and programming teaching, but you also need to build on that. So I think, good adulthood is recovering your innovation so you can build bigger things. It's not like tinkering with little things. If you want to be creative, build a better justice system, build a better health system, build a better government and democratic system. Those are creative acts. Build better businesses that change people's lives. That's what I mean by creativity. And I think that's an adult project.
Thank you, John. And John, one last question for you. How do you live up to creativity and innovation in entrepreneurship? What do you do to fuel that for yourself?
Well, I play this thing very badly, if you can see it. Okay.
Huh?
I don't know. I think my work is, I think what we do at Henley is we value creativity as in life and in business. I mean, business is about productivity and keeping things the same, but it's equally about innovation and creating new forms of value for people. And by I mean value, I mean things that help people's lives, help you live a better life. The value of an iPhone, well, that's not only got value, it's also got all sorts of traps and tyrannies in it as well. So being creative means keeping ahead of the game and not being locked in and trapped by addictions or habits of mind that narrow you down. So I keep myself as creative as I can, I think, probably by talking to people like you, Nokwazi.
Thank you, John. So Allon, I would like to move over to you. And specifically what I'd like to ask you to touch on is, Raiz Corp has a fabulous history in the space of developing entrepreneurs in South Africa. And the fact that you have been named by The Economist as the #1 accelerator or legitimate accelerator across the African continent. So I'd like you to talk a bit more about Raiz Corp. I know you touched on it, but for people to really understand the value of it, because we may have people here who have never heard of Raiz Corp but know of Henley. And then also for you to tell us a bit more about the difference between an accelerator and an incubator.
Thanks, Nokwazi. So the Economist called us, to quote correctly, the only genuine incubator on the African continent. So let's just maybe to answer your question in sequence, you asked a bit about Raiz Corp. So Raiz Corp actually was a mistake. That's the honest truth. It started by mistake. It started with me turning around one small business in Durban. I was the marketing director of a vehicle security business. I had a little ad agency that was my supplier. They were battling. I offered to help them. And after a couple of months, they called me to a Wimpy on a Saturday. And there were two of them, and they put their hands across the table and they said, "Welcome, partner." And I looked at them and said, "Well, we couldn't afford to pay you, so we decided to give you equity in the business." So I said, "Okay, well, thank you." And then I continued to work with them, and now I was a shareholder in a business that wasn't really making money at the time, lots of money at the time. And then I moved up to Johannesburg, and somebody called me and said to me, "So I hear you turn around small advertising agencies. How does it work?" So there were two of them and one of me. And so when they split the equity, it was 33.3% each. So when this person asked me, I said, well, the way it works, because now I had a model, you see, which is that if I turn you around, I get 33.3% of the business. So, you know, I thought it was that's how the model, like.
Allon, you're mute.
I don't know how that happened. I wasn't even no touchy. So I don't know where you heard up to. So they so now I had a model, and now I had two businesses, and I absolutely loved what I was doing. I felt alive and creative, and about hope and changing people's lives, and resigned from the vehicle security business, which I was a shareholder, and then started what was later to become Raiz Corp. And even the name came from actually from a poker game of all things. So the whole story of Raiz Corp is actually, if you go into the deep detail, is all by mistake. It's not because I'm a clever guy. It's because of all these random things that happen that I happen to be able to put together into a business. And that started Raiz Corp, and then that grew from there. And now we don't do just equity. We do equity, and a huge part of the business, 80% of the business, is not non-equity. So what we do for businesses is we provide them infrastructure, boardrooms, meeting rooms, etc. We provide them training, what you would call mentorship, we call guiding. It's a different philosophical approach to working with entrepreneurs. We do their books. We give them access to markets, access to finance, and a community within which to work. Answering the question about incubators and accelerators. So Raiz Corp we call ourselves neither. We call ourselves a prosperator. A prosperator because for me, incubation connotes illness and weakness, and like something is sick and weak and needs to be incubated. We make a lot of millionaires. They're not weak. They're not sick. They are just put into an environment where they prosper. And coming back to the question around why working with Henley, it's those frameworks that enable. There's a lot of enablement that happens in there. Where same thing that happened in my journey prior to Raiz Corp, where somebody gave me a second chance and supported me with a whole bunch of people around me. So, to me, that's what Raiz Corp is. So just to answer the question directly, an incubator is generally longer programs and post-revenue. So it's post-revenue startup phase. Acceleration is generally pre-revenue. It's short programs, and it's mainly focused, it's predominantly successful in the ICT sector, and it's predominantly around building a business case. So what we're doing with Henley is closer to acceleration than to incubation. It's a tighter program where we are building the business case, right? And we're taking the individual through the rigorous thinking of how to build a cogent business case that can stand up to the rigor of an investor or a bank or anyone that would want to invest. But that shouldn't be the main reason. The reason should be for yourself. Why would I start a business that doesn't stack up? I want to give you an example of what happened today. I had two guys come to me today for me to invest in their business. And the way that they had structured the business model was that they were going to need around 300 million rand investment in the business. Now, I don't have 300 million rand to invest. Let's just make that clear, right? So I said to them, there's a different way to model this. If you are trying to use the balance sheet, your balance sheet, in order to grow, then just purely balance sheet, you're going to need that 300 million rand. But if you change the model, where you basically are packaging the contracts and using your contracts as collateral, you don't need as much cash. So you might need to spark it, a couple of million rand to spark it, but you don't need to use your balance sheet. It's a different now from an investor point of view to put in, let's call it 5 million or 300 million rand for the same risk by changing the model. It's a completely different calculation and more likely to get investment if you change the model. They looked at me like I had sort of arrived from the heavens. But that's experience, because I've seen that so many times before. And coming back to what John said around framework, is that I've seen that framework in another context, and so I applied it here. By the same token, they also now needed to go in the early stages, they need a huge rollout. So they were thinking, well, I need all these people to roll it out. So I asked the question, are there no other players, independent players, that can roll it out for you from a operational point of view? So they said, yes, there are, but it's going to cost us 15% more. So I said, it's a no-brainer. Pay the 15%, because you need to focus on building the core. What's the core business? Is it that or this? And so that comes from experience. And to me, what this course is about going through the different, in your mind, they came in with one model. By the time they left, there were two models. If I'd probably spent more time, and if there were other people, there might have been 5 models that might have to have different outcomes. So it's very important for me that when we build a business case, business model, and notice I don't use the word business plan, it's because I don't like the concept of business plan. I like business model. Okay, that there is rigor in it. It's cogent. To me, it's cohesive, and it's compelling. And so a big part of what we want to get across in this is teaching individuals how to get their message across in a compelling way, where they will attract that investment, where they will attract a loan. And at the worst, they'll be able to tell people at a dinner party what they do, and everyone else actually understands.
Thank you for sharing, Allon. I think what I really like, thank you for sharing your journey, because we tend to not hear how people started. We tend to always see the end game and make an assumption that it was built overnight. And I think for me, what's powerful about what you've shared is that for me, it just fits in with the reason why Raiz Corp is so successful, because you went through a journey as an entrepreneur, and you're also able to take some of those lessons and learnings and bring it into you designing your business case, I guess, for Raiz Corp, and growing it to where it is today. So thank you for sharing that with us. Samm, I'd like to come to you now. So everybody, Samm Marshall, he is the founder of a social impact news platform called Social TV. But not only that, he's also in media facilitation and PR, and he's also a media trainer, and also creates websites for schools. So Samm, welcome, and can you introduce yourself and just let everybody know why you're here?
Thanks, Nokwazi. First, I'd like to say to John and to Allon, it's amazing that they're so successful and so incredibly humble, and that they still have all of that memory in terms of how they started their businesses. And I think there's a lot of lessons you can learn from other people's journeys. You don't really have to knock your head. There are some clear ideas and paths that you can follow. Mine, yeah, I do a ton of stuff, and I think you've done an intro. I don't want to belabor the point, but I love building things. I enjoy building things. I worked for many years at SABC and got first-hand experience of how not to do things. Before that, I spent time at ETV for a very long time, and kind of my businesses were started from hosting the morning show on ETV for a very long time, then going to hosting the morning show on SABC. So there was a lot of things that I learned through the editorial processes. And one of them was that we got a lot of requests to do interviews with corporate social investment projects and programs. And I mean, no fault to my editors, they would turn them down because they would believe that a company would have to pay if they're talking about the work that they're doing in a community. So about 6-7 years ago, we saw a gap. I saw a gap, and I started a corporate social impact investment news platform where on a daily basis, we tell the corporate story. We talk about the work that guys like Discovery, ABSA, Nedbank, the list is quite long, exclusive books, the work that they're doing. We do it through different modes. We do it through my team, we write, we do video, we do audio, we do what we call timeline pictures, we do animated content, and we've really been able over the last 6 years to kind of build a news platform that in many ways is respected. We are at all the national key points, we're at every airport. We've partnered with Mail and Guardian. We have so much more partnerships coming. We're in Nigeria, in Botswana. And the idea is that people need to know that corporates really invest their heart, their mind, and their soul. And we were very, very specific and deliberate in telling that story. And that's kind of what we do. So my entrepreneurship journey is a little bit different. I think both Allon and John, they're the strategists and the thinkers. I just jump. So if I have an idea, I do it. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. I come from this idea where it's better to be first to market and learn the lessons. And if you keep the unit small, you can make the mistakes, and kind of be very measured about the steps that you take early on. I mean, obviously there's planning, there's thinking. You've got to surround yourself with smart people. The smarter the people are in the room and the more they disagree with you, the better, because you need that fodder in order to be able to go back and say, what am I doing wrong? And then I think the world is at such a place at the moment where you've got to study your competition. It's very important. I know in the olden days, they used to say, well, you don't have to be first to market. You can wait. But now we know that's changed a little. You've got to kind of be first to market, but also have a strategy that also has flexibility that allows you to innovate on the fly. Because sometimes, for example, in conversations, when we started out, and I'll give you a practical example, when we started our news platform, we were all about corporate social investment. Then the market changed. It was corporate social responsibility, corporate social investment, then shared value. Then I went to a lecture from Mervyn King, and it became integrated thinking. And then I sat in a conversation that was social impact. So, and as you go through these different iterations, you find that the way you write the stories, the way you interpret the content, the way you narrate those stories, because it's about storytelling, you kind of find that even those models change, because the idea of corporate social investment is an outdated model, because you're now sitting in a boardroom where the guys from Morocco who run the corporate social responsibility by Heineken, he's 20 something. So he doesn't come from the old way of thinking. He's innovative in his approach. So you kind of adapt all the time. But obviously I'm speaking as a journalist. Yeah.
So Samm, I think for me, what's quite compelling, I mean, there's a comment over here. It says here, didn't know people like you existed. There's a lot of work that corporates do within their communities. We term it citizenship at ABSA. It's all about storytelling, like you're saying. Grateful you found a niche for this. So I think for me specifically, you're touching on storytelling. You also, you're creative, like and you probably didn't study business. So how have you been able to manage your business as the founder, as the entrepreneur, and how did you navigate this?
Wow, Nokwazi, I've got so many scars and bruises, and I think that's maybe where John and Allon's program is important, because it is a difficult journey. Because when you start out, with all due respect though, I've had 18 years as a journalist, so I found a gap. And it didn't happen overnight. I mean, when we started social TV, we couldn't get one press release from anybody. Now we are getting press releases from the continent, from New York, from Europe, from UK, Ireland. We're now sitting where we get 350 press releases a day in terms of that content. And only now we are slowly monetizing some of those opportunities. It was a very difficult journey, especially if you find yourself being the only journalist. And I'll give you a classic example. When we go to a press conference, we're the only corporate social responsibility journalists in the room. When, for example, Kaiser Chiefs celebrated their 40th birthday, everybody was obsessed with the cup, with how many games they've won, how many trophies, how many coaches they've had. We were obsessed with 40 years of giving to the community. So it was a very different story to walk. And you've got to, unfortunately, in those early years, you're sometimes the only person that gets what you're selling. But I'm fortunate that I'm surrounded by a very strong support group. And the support group made all the difference. I'm also lucky in the fact that because I'm a journalist, I always want to learn, and I'm constantly plugged into what's happening. So I know that you were quite humble in your introduction, but both John and Allon are like rock stars. They're super famous because you follow these people, you hear what they've got to say, and every time I think Allon might have done 1,400,000 interviews. You kind of start picking up stuff and you reference stuff and you go back and you go, oh, that's actually what this plan should look like. And this is what the editorial policy should look like. And this is how we should frame the POPI Act around information sharing. And these are not things that you just pick up day one. It's a constant lesson that you have to engage in. And when you, my kind of person, where you don't have the, as you've stated, the formal business background, but you are an entrepreneur and you want to start things, you kind of learn constantly. So through social TV, through B-Style Media, through B-Style Digital, Live App Festival, it's all lessons that we've learned along the way. And then I must also say, I'm very fortunate that our business model early on was to employ young people. My office manager was 19 years old. My editor for our news platform now, and we've just won an award for Best Corporate Social Responsibility news platform on the continent, and she's in her early 20s. So it's also using the energy of young people. I mean, I can see 50s around the corner for me. So it's also using young people and their energy and their ideas, and that benefits me a lot.
Thank you so much for that, Samm. I'm super inspired, but I also, just touching on what you said about John Foster-Pedley and Allon Raiz. I think for me, this is where the value of such a program comes in, because I know that, John and the vision that you have for Henley and what you've been able to build to date, and to also differentiate the university just from the rest of the market has been incredible. So John, can you just touch on that? A bit? Because I'd also say you're more of, even though you're a dean of a business school, I would characterize you as an entrepreneur, because you have, taken this, UK brand and you have grown it astronomically in South Africa, and it's now a recognizable brand within the business school landscape.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's weird to be thought of as a rock star or something, Samm. I mean, you're my rock star, really. It's just like you're doing really amazing stuff. I think, sorry if the dog's barking in the background. I think one of the things that's fascinating is that why you do something. For me, I remember looking out a window of one of our and saying that, saying to myself, what is the purpose of a business school in this country where you've got the highest Gini coefficient in the world, more people locked in poverty than anywhere else, a history of disadvantage and non-access, a lack of confidence, and the Pacific training, skewed opportunity. And it's deeply unfair. It wasn't the unfairness only that got me, although that was critical. It was just the sheer insanity of it. You've got all these amazingly talented people, these people short of education who confuse education with intelligence. And just because you're educated doesn't mean you're intelligent particularly. I'm sorry to say it. I'm terribly sorry, but it doesn't give you gifted intelligence. And equally, just because you're not educated doesn't mean you're not intelligent. In fact, we're finding we've got a massive number of really smart people in South Africa. And so what we can do with that is start now to build, if we can get to those people and give them the confidence and the frameworks, they're the ones who are going to build this economy we're waiting to build. And all our opportunities locked up in these people who are not getting the access, because they're the talent. It's not the people who are, who you're looking at who have succeeded in that way. It's actually you've got to bet yourself, and it's not like, wow, I'm scared to bet on myself. No, you have to bet on yourself, because actually you're really capable. And if you're not sure of that yet, bet on yourself and prove it to yourself, because you will find out that you are capable. And you might think, oh, I can't do education, I was bad at school. You really can. You know, I mean, I think you can. I dropped out of my degree. You know, I became a long-haired hippie and hung out and did other things for a few years and played music, you know, did several things. And I came back into things later. And you can really do that. And it doesn't mean you can't come back into learning in your 20s, 30s, 40s. The average age of some of our programs is around 37. And that's a level 5 program. It's people who've gone into the world, done well, and now are saying, well, I'm going to try and educate myself. And lo and behold, it's like the scales fall from their eyes and say, I can do this. I had this up here all the time. I never knew about it. And not only, and when you do it when you're a bit more experienced, it's not like you're learning academically, waiting for the pearls of wisdom from the great professor. No, you're learning stuff that you immediately use and you put into practice. And it's empowering you. You think, wow, what happens then is, how brave can I be? You know, and so when I was thinking about what to do with a business school, I said, there's no point in having a business school unless it educates people to build the people who build the businesses to build Africa. So there's no magic or shua stuff in that. It's just plain simple logic. And then simply you try and make it work. You try and make it happen. And that's kind of what we all have to do. We think we're not allowed big ideas because we're not successful. You are allowed big ideas and you must practice them because that's the only way you'll grow. So, you know, if you want to sail a big ship, go where the deep waters are, you know, have a go at it. And you know, the chances that you'll fail desperately and your whole world will fall apart are quite low, actually. Every time you struggle a bit, you're picking up this whole set repository of capability from those lessons, the scars that Samm was talking about, the scars of experience. And you don't need to rip yourself to pieces, but by going into an accelerator, incubator, or you know, Prosperator program, for example, or our program, you are able to grow quicker with fewer scars and come out of there, you know, more active and more healthy and more dynamic than before. That's my belief, anyway.
Thank you, John. So, Allon, I'd like to go back to you. I mean, you know, I remember we received this question before about, you know, how can we help even creatives? I think somebody said they had a dance school. So how, you know, the experience that you've had with working with creatives like Samm and helping them to prosper, I'd like you to touch on that. But the other thing I'd like you to touch on is that, you know, you mentioned that, you know, you don't like the name incubator. I really love the word prosperator. And, you know, when we look at South Africa, our economy, the Gini coefficient that John just touched on, and, you know, youth unemployment, Samm touched a bit indirectly, you know, he employs youth. You know, how has Raiz Corp had an impact within that particular landscape?
Thanks. There's a whole bunch of questions there, but seeing as that you're asking a whole bunch of questions, I also want to respond to two things, and I promise you I will answer the question. I just want to pick up on something that Samm said that was so important around storytelling. You know, I tweeted the other morning, I think it was Saturday, I've written it down here. It said, no one ever made a decision because of a number. They need a story. And that was a very famous individual called Daniel Kahneman, who wrote that. They need a story. And I just want to just relay this particular way to illustrate that. I sit on a number of, or I have sat in my time on a number of credit committees. And to me, it's amazing how you can get a model and if it doesn't have a story behind it, you don't understand it. It's very cold and it's not even two-dimensional, it's one-dimensional. It's like you look at the bottom line or you look at an income statement and say it makes money, and they all look the same. All business plans, as we know, look the same. You're going to make lots of money in year 3. But what you're trying to understand is, what is the individual trying to get across? And so for me, the storytelling is very, very, very important, that storytelling is cogent. It's also cohesive, like it fits, and it also is compelling. You're able to tell a great story about what you do. But the other side is also true. It's not like that's the only thing, because you can have, I think they call them BSs. I can't say on there. They call them BSs, where they tell great stories, but it doesn't stack. the numbers don't stack. And for me, the ideal marriage is where the numbers tell a story and the individual can tell that story together. Just responding also to what John said about models. I was fortunate enough a few years ago to lecture at Oxford at the Side Business School. And as part of the thing, the prof took me for dinner, and he asked me my whole personal story. And him and the head of the MBA program looked at each other and they go, "Oh, that's the Gemma Watt model." And Prof probably knows what that model is. So I didn't know. So I'm looking and I'm thinking, am I that predictable that I'm the Gemma Watt model? And Gemma Watt turns out to be, I think, an Indian professor who worked out that just like Samm, they basically find you sort of find a bit of a market, you do it, and then you grow from there. It's like you reverse into demand, as opposed to starting to build and then they will come. It's also so to me, once you understand these models, you can start to work out what are the right models for you. Coming back to your question in terms of the creative arts, for me, I'm actually trained academically as a marketer. And for me, part of marketing is productizing. It's how you productize something, how you package something. And for me, the most successful individuals that I've seen, particularly in the creative space, have packaged themselves differently and in a way that a market wants it. So very often it's very similar, but they've angled it in a certain way and they've described and packaged it with other things that make that thing, that creative thing, desirable for a market who before thought it was quite ethereal. They've now packaged it. So to any of the creatives out there, when I work with creatives, and Raiz started, with 7 ad agencies. I mean, I went from 1 to 2 to 3 to 7, right? So I had creatives coming out of every corner at me every single day. And the most successful ones were the ones that packaged properly, the ones that had productized and packaged properly. You asked about unemployment, which was the last point. So we've got 4 metrics that we measure at Raiz. One is turnover growth. The second is net profit. The third is employment, and the fourth is net asset value. So we measure that in the businesses. In terms of turnover growth, we sit, depending on which quarter, in the region of around 35 to 45% average growth year on year in our entrepreneurs across all our cohorts. But what's more impressive for me is the net profit growth. The net profit growth sits at around 120, 130% net profit growth. And what that is telling you is that we're fixing the model. Because when 100 Rand was going in at the top and maybe 90 Rand was coming in at the bottom, now 100 Rand's going in the top, or 200 Rand's coming in the top, but 500 Rand's coming in. It's making the models make more money. Then from an employment point of view, our average is sitting right now, and I know this because I did a presentation today, at 29% year-on-year growth. And in the COVID times, just including the last quarter, that includes the last quarter. Employment for me is important how you measure, because in terms of how people measure employment, I'm talking about permanent employment, not somebody who comes in and gets a construction job and it's a project for a month, and then it's created 100 jobs or 200 jobs, but a month later there's no one at that business, so they've temporarily employed people. So the number 29% is around permanent positions, they're permanent contracted positions.
Thank you very much, Allon. So I'd like to go to the questions from people who are listening in. So the first one I've seen over here is, Samm, talk about failures. How can we avoid them?
Wow. Easy answer, probably sign up to this course. If that's not the easy answer, I think they're unavoidable, to be honest with you. Because a business is also a psychological thing. You actually don't wake up in the same state every day. If you are, as Allon was saying, he is Chief Excitement Officer, he knows that he is not only Chief Excitement Officer for himself, but he's also for his company. He's driving the values, the purpose of that business, and he's got to seem to be living them so that everybody who works for him buys into that concept. For us, it's exactly the same. We're obviously not as big as both John or Allon, but we employ 15 permanent people. And those are 15 young people too. So failures are completely unavoidable. I think sometimes you think something is right. Second guessing, I think, is a big part of running a business. You are constantly asking questions. There's constantly new research. Somebody's doing something better. Developing content better. There's new technical tools. So yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer. To be frank, I don't think you can avoid failures. If anybody's told you that they can, I don't know if I would believe that story. Every entrepreneurship journey is different. I know there's a model and a framework, but an entrepreneurship journey is also the person who's taking that journey. And depending on where you are in your life, it could be that, for example, you have a business that's starting to grow, but your personal, it comes at great cost to your personal situation. So there are many, many dynamics. And one for me, for example, I'll tell you a failure that I had. I remember I rented an office at 44 Stanley. It was around 2010. We were going to sell vuvuzelas, and we were jumping on the vuvuzela craze. Rented the office right at 44 Stanley. I think it was Tom's studio. The day we moved in, there was no water in the building. And one of my guys left the tap open. Saturday morning, the entire building was flooded. And I mean, that set me back considerably. The damage to not only the building, but to the office below us. And so there are just many, I don't know how you avoid failures. I just think you learn from them. And I think you're just open to hearing people's journeys. Obviously, not everybody's story is your story. There are little things that you can take out of it. And these days, I'm attracted, maybe it's the wrong word, but I'm attracted to people like Elon Musk. I'm attracted to those kind of entrepreneurs that are kind of going their own path, and they have a vision and they believe in it. Obviously surrounded by super smart people, but I'm really attracted by the entrepreneur at the moment that has a very strong idea, that believes it will work, and then it's backed by some data. Obviously, all the data in the world can't make your business successful. But yeah, it's unavoidable.
Thank you. Allon, since you're also an entrepreneur, I mean, we're getting a lot of questions here about scars. Do you have any scars to share, scar stories to share with us, and how we can minimize that as potential entrepreneurs?
I'm actually, there's two indicators of my scars. I'm actually I've got dark hair, okay, but every one of these is one of the mistakes that I made. And I'm actually incredibly thin, and every single, 10 grams represents another one of the mistakes I made. You can't, I agree with Samm 100%. You cannot get through this without making mistakes, and not even without making mistakes, without making many, many mistakes all the time. But as John said, those are the opportunities, and it's going to sound cliched, but those are the opportunities, and Samm will attest to that. So will John and every entrepreneur listening, that all these mistakes are what made us successful, because as long as we have the ability to learn from it and to accept our part in that blame. So, and to me, this is also about owning stuff. When I interview entrepreneurs and they tell you, I was in this business and I failed because my partner screwed me over. To me, I just switch off immediately. Okay. And why do I say that? Because the right language is, I failed because I allowed my partner to screw me over. That's the right way to frame it. So in all these mistakes, it's about your ownership that is important. It's not just that you're going to have them, but for me, it's where the ownership of that mistake and the actual the desire and the drive to learn from it. To me, we have a thing in Raiz Corp which is 4 W's, where we went wrong. It's www. And if there's a big stuff up in Raiz Corp, we go through this thing where there's no blame, and we try and understand from a system point of view where we went wrong so we can fix the system, which is the third point I want to make. If we know, we've all, I don't know if you all remember what it was like to get on an airplane, but when you got on an airplane, there were usually the air stewards would go cross-check, cross-check. And what they're doing is that they would close the door and then they'd move across and cross-check the other person. Because, you know, if the door opened at 30,000 feet, there's a problem here. So the first time a door opens at 30,000 feet and they turn around and they say, you know, it was Allon. He left the door open. Well, it doesn't matter. I can't blame Allon. I just don't want that to happen again. Right. So for me, it's about taking that learning and then, very importantly, applying it in a systemic way back into the business so that it doesn't recur. Those, to me, so it's all very well to say we'll have scars. It's what we do with them that really counts.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. So we have 2 questions. John, do you want to add to that? You're on mute, John.
I mean, just quickly, I mean, I used to be an airline captain in a previous job. And one of those issues, it's very interesting because you don't want to, you know, a big mistake in an airplane really matters. You know, it requires committees of inquiry, many funerals, etc. You don't want that. Now, the good news is that happens unbelievably rarely. The bad news for you, which you won't like, is that pilots make mistakes all the time. But what is the difference? The difference is if you have scars, if you have a big scar or you lose a hand, that is a mistake you didn't catch early enough. What pilots are really, really brilliant at doing is being alert, aware, talking to each other, noticing subtle cues, remarking on everything passionately. You don't try and fit your reality to what's going on over there. You absorb the reality and interpret it. And you do it really, really early. And then you do very, very quick actions to improve it. Now, that's like good entrepreneurship. You're aware of what's going on. You keep yourself conscious. You see what's happening. You record things in a diary. You check in with other people. You keep a journal so that it helps you notice. You practice seeing. And then you practice what the old CEO of SAB used to say, make reality your friend. Don't fantasize, you know. Don't fantasize how you want it to be. You absorb it, and now you respond to what you see. That's where the discipline of mind comes in. And that's where the learning can help you, gives you frameworks to see. There's no magic. Always at the heart of this is you and your insight and your control. But all these frameworks and learning can help you get better at seeing this and giving you more confidence to trust your own judgment. Because in those situations, only your judgment can really help. But that's also why checklists and patterns and things can really help. And that's why you want your scars to be many but tiny.
Thank you very much, John. So I'm looking at the time and we have 3 questions. So I would like to start off with the first one. This is what I'm going to request. So we have exactly 7 minutes left. Allon, I'd like you to address this one as quickly as possible. In terms of the question is, I'd like to find out from the panel how they view financial management shortfalls that are mainly experienced by entrepreneurs. So I'm assuming maybe how people can look to manage those shortfalls. I'm going to go to the next question before you answer that, Allon. So the next question over here, which I'm going to give to you, Samm, is how do you know when it's time to quit your job and start your company? Practically, how do you mitigate the risk of leaving a fixed salary income and ensuring your family's comfort? So that's a good question. And the last question that I have over here, let's see, is, okay, so 2 more popped up, but this one is maybe for you, Allon, or maybe John. It says, business model for social enterprise. My business, Marimba Jam, uses profits from private schools to sustain the outreach lessons we do at lower income public schools. Is there a magic number of how much profit can be or should be used for outreach work in a social enterprise? So maybe I would give that to you as well, Allon. seeing that you have spoken about the business case with regards to that. So yes, let me start off with you, Allon. So 2 questions for you to answer.
You don't want to give that last one to John. That's a tough one. All right, I'll try. Give it to somebody smart, please. All right, just my question was around financial management. I've just actually written an article. I'm writing a series now of the 20 lessons I've learned over the last 20 years, and it's fresh, literally fresh off these fingers here. To me, I failed accounts twice, and true story. In my second year, there's a balance sheet, and I was 100,000 rand out, and I wrote to the lecturer, "You keep 50,000, I'll keep 50,000," and the dude still failed me. So anyway, so I came up with this idea that I was very bad at accounts, and the first thing I ever did in a business was hire somebody else to do the accounts. And when I was in one of the second business I was in, which was in vehicle security, we built this business very, very big, but we never had money. And the reason we didn't have money is because we didn't manage the financials. So I went to my mentor at the time and I said to him, "Can you please second some clever accountant to the business to help us, with the financials?" And he looked at me and he said to me, "Are you a director of the business?" I said, "Yeah, I'm the marketing director." He says, "Well, change your title and do it yourself." And I was very, very upset by that. And then I started to reflect on that. And what he was saying to me is that if I'm a director, if I'm an owner of the business, I have to own the financial management of the business. It doesn't matter whether I'm the marketing director or the sales director or the financial director, I'm responsible. And so a different journey started with me where I tried to understand what is an income statement and a balance sheet and what's the difference between the two really. And understanding what is the difference between a debit and a credit and all these things. Today, to me, it was the most important turnaround in my success as an entrepreneur that I can pinpoint. That taking responsibility for understanding the financials. You don't have to do them, but you've got to, number one, understand them, and number two, have the discipline to have them done on a monthly basis. To me, they're incredibly, incredibly important. I'll stop there. Second question. Second question was the one that John was very glad he didn't get. I don't know if there's an answer to how much. The answer to how much is, as Sam said, every business is different. For me, the important thing in any social enterprise, and I've been nominated as a social entrepreneur, I resist the term. I'd say we're more a social enterprise, but because I think all businesses do social good. It's but how much of what, so we are a for-profit business, but we've never taken a dividend. Every single cent we've pumped back into building the business more and more. So in my model, 100% of my profit is put back into the same business to have more impact. In another business, it might be that I take some money and I do it as CSI. In another business, it might be that 10% of this goes to that. But for me, what's very important in all social enterprises is that the fact that they do not rely on grant, is that they create product, that they exchange value. So they sell something for money. And when that mindset changes, then you have more power to actually build a sustainable social enterprise.
Thank you. Sam, we'll move to you answering the question about moving from corporate to entrepreneurship.
Because I think there are a couple of truths you're going to have to deal with. And the first one is you need a plan. It doesn't happen overnight. And I'll tell you my journey very quickly. The day I got fed up with SABC, I gave myself 6 months. And in that 6 months, I came to deal with a couple of things. I'm going to have to work much longer. So my day wouldn't stop at 5 in the afternoon. It would go well into 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I did that for 6 months. And the goal was very simple. I wanted to become financially independent from the salary that I received from SABC. And once I became financially independent, I wanted to have 3 months that I didn't need my salary from the SABC. Within 6 months, I was able to do that. I stopped invoicing SABC, and for 3 months, I was able to live off the money my business was making. The second thing that I did was, which is it's an easy route to take. The moment I got my first client, I hired somebody. I hired somebody with a very specific set of skills that could alleviate a lot of my pain points. And once I was able to, and then all I did was I hired one person, got my second client, still had the same person. Only when I got my third contract did I hire another person. So I think you've got to be very diligent in your approach. You've got to have a proper plan. You've got to set down proper targets, and you've got to put a deadline. And you've got to make sure that for the 6 months, 8 months, a year, you are working flat out, because to detach yourself from a monthly income that's guaranteed whether you deliver or not is very different to being an entrepreneur, because you've got to be always on the point, and you've got to now, obviously, as you are moving through the checklist in your project plan, you know that you're also managing other people. So a lot of Red Bulls, a lot of support, a lot of energy, and a lot of good humor, and also take care of your health. I think health is critical to an entrepreneur. You've got to be top of mind, in great shape, in order to deal with what your business life, your personal life throws at you as you make this transition.
Thank you very much, Samm. So John, I didn't ask you a question, but I'm going to ask you to add something towards the end. So looking at the fact that it's 7 o'clock and we don't want to hold up two people for too long, I just want to share a bit about the specific program. So the HCMP, so the Higher Certificate in Management Practice, specifically focusing on entrepreneurship, is a 20-day contact program, which will be run over 12 months. It has 5 blocks where we touch on fundamental management concepts, systems thinking, business acumen, working with people, and also an integrated action learning and presentation. So this may all sound like big words, but I think for me, what's key to point out over here is that the program is based on Henley's Higher Certificate in Management Practice, and we've added in the value of all the different programs that Raiz Corp has run, and we've managed to merge 2 programs together. And this, for me, is what makes this very different. You know, as Allon said, you know, what he likes about working with Henley and with John is that they didn't look at what has been done in the past. They were like, what makes sense now, and what can we make work for the current market right now? And for me, this is what I've seen, is that it's very practical. So Henry believes in action learning. So as you learn, we really encourage you to take what you're learning in class and reapply it into your work, into your business. And really, this is how this program has been designed. And so, John, I'd like you just to add a bit of perspective over there, specifically around action learning, and why Henley focuses specifically on action learning, and what's the benefit of this in an entrepreneurial program?
Well, let's go back to scars, okay, about not wanting your scars to be big. So what action learning is, it's like a flight simulator. You, within a contained and controlled environment, you are pushed into making things happen, which you suffer the consequences, because action learning isn't a project. You take something, a problem you don't quite understand, you try and work out what to do about it, you try it out, and then you make notes of everything you're doing, and you stay awake, you notice everything you thought would happen, but particularly you make sure you notice those uncomfortable things you didn't want to happen. And then you huddle quickly and make sense of what's going on, so those things don't go off in a bad direction. Then you change your plan and try a new idea, and you keep doing that process. And it's like a flight simulator. So your ideas and your business come into that flight simulator. And in that contained environment, you can now start to accelerate your learning curve. Instead of taking a long time to learn, you can learn quickly in a relatively safe environment without losing all that money. But the real purpose of an action learning is not the success of your project. What action learning does is force you to learn fast in real life. You learn to learn in real life. In other words, instead of making long mistakes and repeating them, you learn much better you learn the skills of learning, fast learning. So you can experiment quicker, you can change direction quicker, you can understand what's going all right or wrong quicker, and you can adapt your model. And that is the real secret. I mean, I was fascinated listening to Samm and Allon because they had so much to say that was really, really helpful. You know, Allon talking about the need to understand money, that is so right. And to change your relationship with money. You know, the purpose of a business is not making a profit. The purpose of businesses need to make a profit, but the purpose of your business is its purpose, and that's the value you bring to people. People are not going to come and buy you because you want to make money. You know, that's not, you've got to have something they deeply value and something authentic, in my view, because they'll keep coming back to you. If you cheat them or give them something that you don't want to buy, you won't have a reputation, your business won't last. So find things of real value, then understand how the money works so you can use it really, really well. You know, and I mean, it was Robert Kiyosaki saying something like, don't save your money, spend it on your future, spend it on the things that make money for your future. I think the quote was, spend it on your best buy for future security. And so learn how to invest that money, the profits you make. And so working on a program like this allows you to come into an environment where you've got lots of people forcing you to think about yourself, who you are, building your trust, teaching you how to make judgments and learning from them, teaching you about the nature of business, teaching you to be fascinated by money, not frightened by it, and not teaching you to love money, but understand it's an energy you can use to make really good things happen, where you can grow your business and you can apply it sensibly. And then the whole thing becomes this fascinating, multi-perspective game almost, but a beautiful game where you can build a business of something that's of value. And then you can start to give things away, like in the social enterprise models we talked about before. What's the point of having a social enterprise model if your own business goes bust? You've got nothing to give. It's like the oxygen mask. Use it yourself first. So when you get into this, it's a way of life that's really fascinating. And it's a way of life that will help us grow multiple businesses in South Africa and help grow the economy and help put our country on the right track. And that's why I deeply believe in this. I think it's something that matters. It really matters. And that's why we'll make a small profit out of this program. Of course we will, but we invest all that back. Like Allon, apart from a little bit we give to the university that owns us in the UK. We don't make lots of bucks. We're fascinated in making growth, and we give away lots of scholarships as well. And it's that whole mixture of things that makes programs like this worth doing. And particularly because they might be sitting next to you, Nokwazi, or sitting next to you, Samm, or somebody like you, and listening to somebody like Allon. And I think it's going to be a really cool thing.
Thank you, John. And so, you know, one of the questions we've received is this right for me as an e-commerce business? We've had other questions about, you know, what are the prospects of this course? What will I come out with? And if you have been listening to this masterclass and you've heard what John, what Allon and Samm had to say, the outcome of being in such a program is, one, you'll learn the skills of storytelling. You will learn how to create a business case and business model. The other thing is that entrepreneurship is about continuous learning. So for me, it's not about viewing this and saying, oh, this is just going to be another certificate. As an entrepreneur, you've got to be constantly reinvesting in yourself and seeing this as an investment in your learning. The other thing that both John and Allon touched on is that it's practical. It is practical. It is not a program where you're going to come on and have to read a whole lot of textbooks. You're going to be in the classroom with other entrepreneurs or other aspiring entrepreneurs. The other thing I love that Allon touched on is that it is South African. It's not copying a US model, a UK model, an India model. It is a South African model. And it is right for small business. And I think we're at a time where I think there's opportunity for us who maybe have not been in business to take a jump, to take the risk, as Samm has said, but obviously learn how to create the right business case to start your small business or to accelerate and grow your small business. So if you have been asking yourself, why should I do this? I think the answers that I've given you over here should answer that. And so the last thing for me to say to you is that please head over to the Henley SA website and go to the Higher Certificates in Management Practice for Entrepreneurs, where you will be able to get more details about this program. Or you can also get in touch with Nisa Philander. I'll write her name here on the chat, but her details are also available on the website for you to get more information about this program. So in order for us to wrap up, in 30 seconds, Samm, anything you want to say to our audience?
Yeah, I'm gonna second everything you're saying. It's such an exciting time to learn. We know that the unemployment rate is incredibly high, and a lot of people are really, they've got their backs against the wall, and they need to create opportunities for themselves. I'm sorry to say that we're still waiting on the president. We don't know what the recovery plan looks like. We don't know what government is going to roll out, but whatever it is, it's not going to get those 3 million people that have lost their jobs in the last 5 months back to work immediately. So we know entrepreneurship is the key. And also, studies show us that people at this age, 40 plus, this is the right time to consider a career move, creating a job. So I think I second what everybody's saying. And what can be more exciting than building? I love the idea that you can build yourself into a better life. I love that.
Thank you. Allon, I head over to you.
Yeah, for me, I think just continuing with the COVID theme, I think what COVID has done is it's dislodged so much, that there is so much opportunity being presented right now. If you've got your eyes well tuned right now, there's more opportunity present in the market right now than there's been in probably the last 10 years combined. Depends where you're looking. And if you're one of those people that can see that or wants to see that, then something like this is an ideal way to then translate that opportunity into success.
Thank you, Allon. And John?
Well, why would you educate yourself? I mean, one always wants to do it for the business and all those good things, but really it's about you. It's about what you can be. I mean, it's hard work learning, and you don't want to learn in an academic environment that's just going to teach you ideas. But if it's a combination of building you and your capability, allowing you to make things better, our motto is we build the people who build the businesses that build Africa. So unless we build people who can build businesses, we haven't succeeded. We're not interested in slapping qualifications on people. Out of my way, I've got an MBA or whatever it is. We want people to be really good at doing things. And that gives us joy. And we have joy from educating people. We really attract fascinating people to work with us, not because we're great, we just have a mission. And we're very privileged that people come and help build that mission in partnership, people like Allon. It's wonderful to work with them. So this is about you. Are you going to bet on yourself? How high can you fly? How far can you go? What's in there? Have a go at letting that out. And you don't have to be rash and crazy to do that. You've got to be measured. You've got to study. You've got to find the right time. You've got to use your intellect well. And all these things grow at the same time. And they give you a sense of being in life, of agency, of capability. And it's that deep confidence that we need to make our economy and our people and Africa be what it really is, and in a sense doesn't believe it is yet. It's time to make all this happen, and we're part of that journey, and we're just privileged to try and help people learn to grow businesses, and that's what we want to do.
So I'd like to wrap off this evening with my favorite quote, which is, the best way to predict your future is to create it. So go out there and create, and find people, find programs like ours that will help you to create and grow whatever it is that you're looking to build. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. Thank you, Allon. And thank you, Samm, for your time and for all your knowledge.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.